Explore Jordan with Jules. Here I am outside of Ajloun Castle, again for the fourth time. An amazing Islamic castle. On the signage it says, in 1099 AD, the Crusaders invaded Jerusalem and established the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and they occupied the south of Jordan and built castles Shobuk and Karak, 1142 AD. But it was Saladin, the founder of the Ayyubid dynasty in 1171 to 1250, that eventually drove the Crusaders out. And this is one of Saladin's castles. Actually, this information sheet reminds me, because today is July the 4th, and in July the 4th, 1187, the Saladin had a victory over the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin, which is very close to here, just on the other side. The Battle of Hattin is near Qais. You can actually see over to the Sea of Galilee, the Lake of Galilee, and the Battle of Hattin was near there. So to the north of what is now occupied Palestine. Very important. And the other important thing about the Battle of Hattin was that was where the Crusader René de Chillon was captured and killed. So it's a very important battle. Actually, an anniversary today, July 4. The signage is also reminding me that this was an Umayyad castle, it's huge, in 661 AD, an Abbasid, then Ayyubid, then it was a Mamluk. Mamluks were the Egyptians. Then an Ottomans from 1517 to 1918, and therein lies the problem for what is happening in occupied Palestine today, and this is the modern era. It's one of the best preserved castles, and it has some absolutely amazing defences, not only with its parapets, its turrets, it also has murder holes where you drop the burning oil onto people. It has a moat. It's an amazing defensive castle overlooking this amazing space that is the Ajloun forest. Even as we just look at Ajloun Castle, you can see that it is a great defensive castle because of initially its height. It's very tall, 3 stories. Over in this section just here, you have a barbican, you have a one-directional single entry point that is controlled by a moat, and the moat comes down here. The moat goes around the base just here. When you go up through the barbican, the one entry over a kind of a drawbridge, there is a murder hole just as you come to the main entryway. And over on this side here, you have additional guard towers, which is just beautiful. Each time I visit an antiquity, I often get a different perspective. Today I had the opportunity of going down into the moat, and that walking bridge would have been where the drawbridge was, and you can see the amount of bedrock that Ajloun Castle is built on, making it a very strong and sturdy defence. The height of Ajloun Castle would have been very intimidating for anyone trying to attack. So immediately entering the castle, you can see some of its defence mechanisms. So you have the moat. In the slits in the wall, you've got the arrow holes. You will have a drawbridge just here, which will be raised, and I'll show you the mechanism for raising that. Then you have a barbican, which is a unilateral, a one direction. And then once we get to the top of those stairs through that barbican, which is basically channeling everybody into the one space, we'll find a portcullis. And the portcullis is a grated metal door that is raised up and down. And then when we see that, we'll also see the murder hole. So once you've crossed the drawbridge, you've come up the barbican, you would have reached the portcullis, which will be a grated gate that would be raised. It would have spikes on the bottom. But then what you will also find is a box machilion, the murder hole. And if I just go up here a little bit, you'll be able to see the murder hole where things will be dropped. Hot oil, rocks would be dropped down on the invaders. Entering through the portcullis, if it was opened for you and you weren't scalded by the hot oil, you would come into a reception hall, an information hall, a reception hall, and you were greeted by the first of 6 wells. There's 6 wells on this site because it is important to have water. And that is what an arrow slit. Once you have entered the reception hall after you survived the portcullis and the murder hole, and you would have had your first drink because the well is just there, you think, well, how did the drawbridge get opened? And what you will see in the wall just up here is a groove, and this would be the anchor point for a horse drawing the drawbridge up. The rope would come through here and be pulled by a horse so that the drawbridge would raise. So you have been met by some of the biggest defences almost instantly that you come into the castle. When you're moving around the castle, because there is no real ambient light except for what comes through an arrow slit, you have holes in the ceiling and they act as the light. But once you have crossed the drawbridge, come up the barbican, met the portcullis, and if they've deemed you a reasonable person, they haven't dropped anything on you down this box machilion, this murder hole. I'll just see if I can get some vision of somebody coming through. So if your role was on defence, you would be sitting up here and watching the people coming up the barbican, and if the portcullis had been opened, and you would be deciding if these people were friends or foe. But today all of these lovely ladies were friends, and they were coming to have an explore of Ajloun Castle. And there's the lovely little Mia coming through in a second. Not all sections of Ajloun Castle have been restored or are open to the public. Each time I do visit, there is often a different room or an area that I can explore. But coming up here, you can see over the whole of the Ajloun forest, and this is where you would get your food, your olives, your game, and then it would be stored over in this section right here underneath the castle. This would also be where the horses and cattle were stored. The section of the castle that you can see to the left is the kitchen, and we'll go and have an explore there. The type of game that you would expect to find in Ajloun Forest would be deer, wild boar, polecats, martens, jackals, and wolves. One of the bigger rooms that you come into here at Ajloun Castle is the Masala hall, the prayer hall. Just as you come through the door, there's a little ablution space. Beautiful, beautiful, serene space. Other than fires and lanterns, the only light, natural light, would come via the ceiling or via these very large arrow slits in the wall through this very solid wall. So when you're looking at any of the rooms in any of the castles, what you're going to see is the size really doesn't mean that much. But what is really important, that this has a fireplace and a flue. So that tells us that somebody high up, or a family, a leader of some kind, would have occupied this space because it has a fireplace. And it also has a little doorway that heads over to the mosque. So that also tells us that potentially that somebody very important occupied this space. Once we come to the top of the stairs, you can either go over to the right, which is the kitchen, or over to the left, which is the Byzantine chapel. If you go into the kitchen, you are also going to see the huge fireplace, and this is where all the meat would be cooked. Then you also have some entrances, and they potentially would have led to gardens or something of that nature, or to stables. Over here we saw vision before of the stables and some of the food storage areas that would have supplied the castle. And this is the kitchen just here, and then it would have led down over to some potentially some gardens, a herb garden or something of that nature, and the stairs going down to the stables or the food storage area. Now there are pigeons all around here, but somewhere there would have also been a dovecote. Pigeons and doves would have been really important. Pigeons would have been the messengers. Because this is a very small castle, there is the potential that people would have eaten, the guards and everybody would have eaten in this space as well. Usually you would have had a larger eating hall that was separate to the kitchen, but because this is such a small castle, there's the potential that this was the dining hall as well. So as we move over to the Byzantine church, we're greeted by another one of the wells, and on the wall you'll actually see a cornucopia, and a cornucopia is a symbol for fertility. Now the mosaic of the loaves and the fishes, what you're going to see is a larger triangle, and that is a fish, and then next to it is a smaller triangle, and that is the loaves. So this is the loaves and the fishes. Another part of the defence of this castle is the size of the walls. They would have to be 3 meters thick. They are just massive. And each time I visited here, this is my 3rd or 4th time, different parts have been restored and open to the public to come and see. If you look back on previous videos, you will see that this space wasn't available on the first time, but it was on the second time. And that's where I got to chatting to that lovely American lady. This area down here is being restored. And there's continual maintenance on the castle at all times. So each time you come and visit, you will see something very different. Even if you've been here once, come a second time, another year or so later, and you'll see something very different. One day when I come up here, I'm actually going to have some pretty clear view. It's still pretty hazy. But over here to the west is occupied Palestine, and you'll have Al-Quds, Jerusalem. Over there you'll have Nablus and Tiberias, Sea of Galilee, Lake Tiberias. And that was where the Battle of Hattin was, just near Tiberias. One day we'll be able to see occupied Palestine, and it will be a genuine Palestine with no occupation. Doesn't matter how many times you visit, as I say, this is my third or fourth time to Ajloun, and this is the first time this terrace has been open to come out and have an explore. I'm standing just over the kitchen, so the covers here are to the lights down to the kitchen. That's down to stables and storage area, and one of the defensive towers. I've been following a large group of Muslim women, Jordanian women, and the young girl kept smiling and saying hello, and then she wanted to take a photo. Clearly, you don't often see many Western people that get that close to, so just really sweet.